Burukhat habaot, ladies, and welcome to another edition of Torah Anytime and to our Ohel Sarah home. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are now continuing the series on Shalom Bayit. I've gotten a lot of emails from you guys that you're loving it. Baruch Hashem. So happy. We'll continue, and I hope that it's going to help you. We'll begin with the fact that there was a woman in the United States who did extensive research on the topic of marriage and love, and she wrote a book that's over 600 pages. But how did she conclude the book? She wrote the following: to what can we compare marriage life in the Western world? To a boiling teapot that you removed from the flame and the water becomes cold as time passes. This is so true. So I'm going to address the women now. I'm going to talk to you. Ladies, do you remember the smiles that you gave your husband before you were married? Do you remember how happy you were prior to marriage when you were dating your husband? And to the men out there, do you remember the knowing glances that you'd give your kala before the wedding? You remember how happy you were that she was yours? You remember all the emotions and the beautiful talks you used to have? What happened to all those surprises? What happened? Before the wedding, you worked so hard to try and surprise your kala. You went to such great lengths just to make her happy, to make her feel that she's cared about. She'd come out to throw the garbage, and you'd pop out of the garbage can with a red rose in your hand. You remember those days? You were so charismatic before you got married. You were so charming and respectful. But then as soon as you got married, you became a couch potato. You became unexciting. Tell me, why did you cool off? And to the woman, I ask the same. Why did you cool off? Don't you realize that from the day you get married, which is supposed to be one of the happiest days of your life, from that point on, the happiness and the excitement is supposed to increase, not decrease. Think of the teapot example. At first, the teapot that's on the fire starts to make a lot of noise when the water starts to boil. That's you during your engagement period. That's you, making a lot of noise. You're so excited. But then as soon as you get married, for some crazy reason, you take the teapot off the fire and you let the water cool off. Why? The truth is that the problem begins even before marriage, because many people don't even know why it is that they're even getting married. They don't really understand the meaning of marriage. And sadly, in the Jewish world today, in the frum world, a lot of couples don't understand why they're getting married, meaning the meaning of marriage. There was a rabbi in Israel who liked to meet with the chatan and the kala before teaching them the halachot and hashkafa. And one day, a couple who had recently become engaged came to the rabbi's house for their initial pep talk. So the rabbi asked the chatan, "Is this the girl that you decided to marry?" And the young man said, "Yes, this is my kala." And then the rabbi asked him, "What do you see in her? I mean, I'm sure there are hundreds of girls out there that are smarter than her, prettier than her, wealthier than her, more charming than her. Why did you dafka choose her? What do you see in her?" So the young man smiled and says, "You know why I want to marry her? I'll tell you why. When I'm down and things aren't going well for me, she makes me happy. When I'm sad, she talks to me and lifts up my spirits. When I'm bored, she agrees to go out with me and spend some time with me. She pampers me, and she gives me whatever I ask for. So it seems to me that after the wedding, she'll make an excellent wife for me." Very nice. The rabbi turned to the girl and asked her, "And you, what do you see in him? I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of men out there who are brighter than him, wealthier than him, more charming than him, more sophisticated than him. Why did you dafka choose him? What do you see in him?" And she answered the same way her chatan did. When I'm bored, he cheers me up. When I'm sad, he tries to make me happy. When I'm tired, he actually understands and we just don't go out. He's interesting to talk to and he gives me whatever I ask for. So it seems to me that after the wedding, he'll make for me a good husband. The rabbi turned back to the boy and he says, what did you see in her? You know what you saw in her? Tovli, naimli, kefli. I have it good, I feel pleasure, I feel excited. And then he turned to the girl and said, what did you see in him? Tovli, naimli, kefli. I have it good, I feel pleasure, I feel excited. So it seems to me that there's going to be two selfish people that will stand under the chuppah who want to get married. That's what's going on over here. Shocking, but that's what he said. Now, if each person will want to pull the rope more to his side, what's going to happen to the rope? The rope's going to snap, and this couple is going to find themselves living together, but being alone. Many of us get married for selfish reasons, but what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell us selfish people? V'hayu lebasar echad. How can you take these two selfish people and connect them so that they should become one rather than two separate individuals with their singular agendas? How can we see to it that the teapot doesn't cool off? Speaking of the teapot, and tea, by the way, it reminds me of a very cute joke that they tell about marriage and how marriage is very similar to a tea bag, because they say that first it looks like everything comes in a very neatly wrapped package. But then you realize it actually comes with strings attached. The next thing you know, oh, bloop, you're in hot water. That's it. But again, how could we see to it that the teapot doesn't cool off? With the glue of love. But what is love? Ladies, I'm about to teach you a yesod that you should pay attention to. And if you can, write it down and stick it on your fridge and learn it every day. Because if you do, it will be a zgula for shalom bayit. Let's analyze the word ahava. In gematria, the word ahava equals 13. Interestingly, the word echad, which means one, also equals 13. Ahava and echad both equal 13. Now let's go back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's instruction manual. What's written there? V'davak be'ishto v'hayu lebasar echad. Echad in gematria is ahava. That's the secret of love. The glue that's going to bind a man to his wife is their achdut. When they are echad, when they are one, there is a real love between them. What does it mean for a man to love his wife? It means to be one with her. What does it mean for a woman to love her husband? It means to be one with him, to feel his presence. For the men, they should feel their wife's distress. You tell me, how does a woman usually measure her husband's character? When she's feeling good or when she's feeling bad? It's when she's feeling bad. When she's feeling badly and he manages to be at her side, comforting her, that's when you see how invested he really is in the oneness of their relationship. But when you have it good, it's very easy for your husband to act like your best friend and stand at your side. And to the men, we could ask, how could you find out the true character and quality of a woman when you have money and when you don't have money? It's when a man doesn't have too much money that you see the nature of the woman coming out. It's no big deal to be your husband's best friend when he's loaded with money and sharing the wealth with you. But let's see how you measure up when after 2 years he hasn't bought you any gifts because times are tough. How are you going to react? What are you going to do? How are you going to treat him? What demands are you going to make? Will you still love this man? This is what echad means. It means to be able to feel the anguish of one another. If a woman has a headache and the husband doesn't feel it with her, he's not really one with her. If your husband's stomach is growling from hunger and you tell him, oh, there's the kitchen, make yourself an omelet, you are not one with your husband. Let's take the following scenario. A man is sitting on his couch watching a football game. Now, I only use this scenario because there are couples out there who unfortunately, sadly, terribly, whatever you want to, all the adjectives you want to use, have a television in their homes. And this is such a deterrent for a happy marriage and for children to be raised in a positively spiritual environment. It destroys a marriage, the television, whether it's in the living room, and worse if it's in the bedroom. But the point is that unfortunately these men are addicted to their sports, which is, if you look at the Torah, is a horrible thing. It's not a good thing. And during the most intense part of the playoffs, his wife comes over to him and says, Shimi, I have a headache. He's so caught up in that ridiculous game that he says, you have a headache? Take something, take a Tylenol, take something. So she says, I took every pill imaginable and it's still, my headache is not going away. So he says, okay, so, maybe you should make a doctor's appointment. And he's not even looking at her, he's looking at the game. What did this husband just tell his wife? He told her anything he could just to get rid of her, so she should leave him alone so that he could go back to watching that ridiculous football game in peace. Kilu, now that whoever wins the football game, as if it's going to now earn him olam haba. And then, when the game is over, he suddenly remembers he has a wife. And that's when he starts with all his beautiful words. Miriam, I'm crazy about you. You mean the world to me. You're so beautiful. It's nonsense. Guys out there, your words don't mean anything, because after you dismissed your wife when she was in pain, now you look for her. Now you try to appease her with your empty words. You know what it looks like when a man really loves his wife? You know what it looks like when a man is really one with his wife? I'm going to tell you. Take the same scenario. You're watching the game. The wife comes to you and she says, Shimi, I have a headache. If you really love your wife and you want to be one with her, what do you do? As soon as you hear the words, I have a headache, you jump up. That's what you're supposed to do. And you say, what? You have a headache? You turn off the TV, you throw away the remote control, and you say, come Miriam, sit next to me, my darling, my honey. I know it's exaggerated, but and Miriam sits down next to you with the happiest look on her face. And then you say, your head is hurting you? I feel so bad. You know what she's going to say to you? Shimi, I think I'm feeling better already. I think the headache went away. I tell you guys, you are your wife's Tylenol. You're your wife's vitamin. You are her Excedrin migraine pill. Your wife was in need of what I call the Tsumi vitamin. You know what that is? Tsumi is short for Tomed Lev, which means attention. The Tsumi pill. Now this Tsumi pill can't be found in any pharmacy, you should know. But a woman who gets this Tsumi pill from her husband is the happiest person on the planet. If a man does not provide the Tsumi pill, he'll feel the tsunami. Let's put it that way. Therefore, a man has to learn to make his wife happy. And it doesn't take a lot to make a woman happy. At least a normal woman. When a man tells his wife how much he loves her, how much she means to him, especially when she's not feeling well, and he actually remains at her side, that's when his words are filled with meaning. That's what it means for a man to be one with his wife. Now let's talk about you ladies, the women out there. If your husband's stomach is growling because he's hungry, you don't point to the kitchen, no matter how tired you are. You have to take care of this man. Our grandmothers knew how to take good care of their husbands. They may not have had a master's degree in an intellectual subject, but they had a doctorate in managing their homes and taking care of their children and husband. Ladies, to be one with your husband means to feel his pain, his anguish, and even what he's lacking. Rav Aryeh Levine, alav shalom, the tzaddik of Yerushalayim, when he was 75 years old, he went with his wife to the doctor because her foot was hurting her. When the doctor showed them into the examination room and he asked, "What seems to be the problem?" Rav Aryeh answered, "Our foot is hurting us, doctor. Our foot." Why did he say that? Because he felt one with his wife. He thought the following: Ishti ze ani ve'ani ze ishti. I am my wife and my wife is me. It's the same thing. This is the way in which married couples should live. This is how HaKadosh Baruch Hu instructs married life to be. V'davak be'ishto. What's the glue that connects you both as a couple? Ve'hayu lebasar echad. When you function as one. Echad is ahava. That's the secret of love. So what do we see is written in the manual of the Creator. V'davak means to be one. And what's the glue that binds? To be one with your partner. And what is echad? 13. 13 is ahava in gematria. That's the secret code. Ahava is 13. Now watch this. When a man loves his wife the right way, he brings the number 13 to fruition. And when a woman loves her husband back the right way, that's another 13. 13 plus 13 is how much? It's 26. What do we know about the number 26? The number 26 is the gematria of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name that represents the attribute of mercy, of Rachamim. That's what the pasuk means when it says Shechina shruya benehem. Now that we spoke a little bit about the spiritual aspect of marriage, let's discuss some practical tips that can help us in everyday life. Let's analyze what love really is from a practical perspective. Rav Dessler, alav shalom, in a sefer called Michtav Me'Eliyahu, wrote that unfortunately in this generation, the letter Aleph changes places with the letter Taf. Now, what does that mean? It means that now we find that the word Ahava, which starts with the letter Aleph, has turned into the word Ta'ava, which means a desire. And usually it's a tava, it's not a good desire. In other words, the impulse of desire has breached our faith and has entered our home. Unfortunately, many people assume that the lust they feel is actually love. For example, Miriam asks Shimi what he'd like to eat for supper. Shimi tells her, "Please make me chicken because I love chicken." You love chicken? If you love chicken, why do you broil it in the oven? If you love chicken, why do you bite into it without any compassion? But what Shimi doesn't realize is that he doesn't love chicken. He has a desire to eat it. He has a ta'ava for chicken. Today, ahava has become ta'ava. Imagine the following scenario. One day you're walking down the street and you see a male horse galloping on the right side of the street. On the other side, across the street, is a female horse. She's also galloping on the street. Suddenly, the male horse looks at the female horse, and the female horse looks at the male horse. Suddenly, the male horse lets out a scream, and the female horse responds. Tell me, is there love between these two horses? No. What are those two horses experiencing. It's called ta'ava, a lust. People think that this is love. This is a fatal mistake. If you look in an Israeli dictionary, you'll notice that the word ahava appears at the beginning of the dictionary, while the word ta'ava appears at the end of the dictionary. You see the distance between ahava and ta'ava? You see? So what then is love? Rav Dessler writes that in today's society, many people don't understand what love really means. Love has turned into a selfish tool to acquire what you desire. Because when a man tells a woman, I love you, maybe he's really telling her, I love what you can give me. When a woman tells a man, I love you, maybe what she's really saying is that she loves his checkbook. Today, many people experience what we call a love of self, where we fulfill our needs and desires through somebody else. And sadly, so often we read stories in the paper of partners who kill their spouses because of this intense love, quote unquote, that they felt for them. So obviously, many people don't know what love really is. So I want to go back to our dear friend Rami for a moment. One day, Rami comes home from work and finds an empty apartment. True story, by the way. His girlfriend, who lived with him for 5 years, she got smart, took all her things and left. She left him a note in the kitchen that read, no ring, no wedding, no friendship. Oh, she finally woke up, the girl. She realized that nothing is moving forward in this relationship, so she had to do something drastic. You know how Rami reacted? He was so hurt. He picked up the phone with tears and he said to her, I don't understand why you did this. It's not nice at all what you did. You really hurt my feelings. And his girlfriend explained. He says, excuse me, mister, but my hairs are turning white already from this situation. The years are passing by. I can't live like this anymore. I want children. I want to build a home with a husband. I want this relationship to go to the next level. So either we get married or we end things. Zeu. So he says, okay, I understand you. But how did you just run away like this without telling me? How did you just throw away 5 years of friendship into the garbage like that? It's not nice of you. Didn't we promise each other that if there's ever a time we have to call it quits, we'll do it at least in a nice way? So she says, okay, so what do you want? And he says, can we go out one last time for dinner? And she agrees. Ladies, this is a true story that happened in Israel. He invited her over for dinner and ordered the fanciest meal from the most expensive restaurant in Tel Aviv. They sat in the balcony eating their supper, facing the beautiful sunset. And indeed, it was their last supper. Because Rami excused himself for a moment, went into the house, took a container of gasoline, poured it all over himself and her, and he set them both on fire. You know what the saddest part is? That the newspapers wrote the following the next day. Hu saraf otam merov ahava. He set her on fire because of how much he loved her. Tell me, this is normal? This is love? This isn't ahava. This is ta'ava. I had a talmidah who told me about the boy that she was dating for over a year. Ridiculous. She said, Rabanit, he loves me. He really loves me. I said, he loves you? Let's see if he really loves you. I'll show you one way that you can know if he really loves you or if he loves what you provide him. So she says, well, what's the test if he really loves me? So I said, tell him that for the next month, you're not going to engage in any physical act, not even holding his hand. You're only going to express yourselves through speech. No touching, just talking. Obviously, we're talking about a girl who is not yet observant. So she said to me, but he's going to be so upset. So I said, well, if that's the case, then he doesn't really love you. Because a man who loves a woman is ready to die for her, even if there's no intimacy between them. A man has to love the woman and not what he gains by being with her. And I said to her, if a man starts to dislike his girlfriend because there's no touching involved, that means he never really loved her. Rather, he just liked the outside packaging. He loved the outside covering, but not her neshama, not her soul. Today, what people think is love is really just the love of self that they're trying to fulfill through someone else. The Kotzker Rebbe, alav shalom, once asked his Talmidim, tell me, does a fisherman love fish? And they said, sure they do. Sure he does. So he said, if a fisherman loves fish, why does he trap them in a net? Why does he kill them and then eat them? The fisherman doesn't love fish. Rather, he loves the money that he earns when he sells the fish in the market. And then he said, it's even deeper than this. He said, a fisherman doesn't love fish. He loves the pleasure that he receives from the money that he makes from the fish that he caught and killed. And he says it's even deeper than that. A fisherman doesn't love fish. He loves himself when he feels the pleasure from all that money that's being made when he caught the fish and then killed it and sold it. The fisherman loves himself. That's the bottom line. Kotzker Rebbe says this. This kind of philosophy should never enter our homes. So what then is the secret of love? We'll begin with a preface that consists of 4 words. Ha'ahava hi toladat hanetina. Love is the prospect of giving. The person that you're going to invest in is the one that you'll fall in love with. You see this sometimes in relationships right away, like sometimes in dating. A guy will sometimes bring a little tchotchke, not right away, but bring something for the girl. Oh, consider her, like here's a soda, I brought a bottle of water for you. She might also, you see, there's a giving. If a man wants to truly love his wife, he has to give to her. He has to invest in her. You want to fall in love with your husband? You have to give to him. You have to invest in him. That's unconditional love. You're not giving or investing because your husband treated you nicely, spoke to you calmly and passionately, or provided you with gifts. No, because that's called love of self. That kind of love means that all you're trying to do is love yourself through him because he's providing you with what you need. All that means is that one day your husband won't provide those items for you. You'll stop feeling for him and the love will simply just fade away. And to the men I say, it's not that if your wife cooks for you, launders your clothing, and respects you, then you'll love her. No, because that means you're just trying to love yourself through her. It's a selfish kind of love. Because on the day that she won't be able to provide you with your needs, you won't desire her and the love will fade away. The Mishnah in Avot says, Ahava shetluya bedavar, batel hadavar, batel ahava. A love that's dependent on something, when that something vanishes, so does the love vanish with it. So how is it possible to love someone without compromises or conditions? You have to give your heart and soul. In order to love, you have to give. You don't get married in order to receive. You get married in order to give. Ahava hi netina. Love means to give. The more you're going to invest in your partner, the more you're going to learn to love him. So let's give a few practical examples of this. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a mechanism inside of us where the one thing that we invest in so much, we become attached to it in a very significant way. I'll give you an example of this. Take a bottle that is right in front of you, sits in front of you. You have any connection to that bottle? No. There are no sentiments involved when it concerns that bottle. If you take that same bottle and you clean it every day, you decorate it, you kiss it twice a day, I might eventually see you at every shiur with that bottle in your hand. Why? Because you invested in that bottle. You became attached to it. Parents are a perfect example of this. How is it possible for parents to love their children? A child could be selfish, he could be a nudge, could be frustrating, nerve-wracking. He makes a mess everywhere he goes. He even takes advantage of the parents. As soon as he starts to talk, he says the word bamba, bamba. He gets a little older. He comes to you and he says, Ima, can I have $50 to spend at the mall? He gets a little older. Oh, Ima, can you buy me those expensive sneakers? It's only $150. He gets even older and he says, Ima, can I have the keys to your car? I'm going out with some friends. He gets married and he says, Ima, my wife is sick. Can you come take care of the kids? Wow. It seems like there's no end with these children. Children think their parents are cows because they're constantly wondering how much they can milk their parents for. And the parents give in and they agree. Why? Because they love their children. Tell me, if you would have a neighbor as frustrating as your child is, how long would you continue to be friends with that neighbor? You wouldn't last a week in a relationship with that neighbor. And yet your child acts in ways that are 10 times worse, and you love him so much. How is this possible? You know why you love that child? Because you invested in that child. You gave him your heart and soul and everything else that you possess. You love your child because you give everything that is you to that child. That's why you love your 5-year-old troublemaker. And what about your 35-year-old son? And what about your 45-year-old son? If you would invest in your husband the same way that you would invest in your child, you'd love your husband in the same way you love your child. Unconditionally, no matter what happens. And to the men I ask, why does a father love his daughter? Your 6-year-old daughter comes crying to you and she says, Abba, Abba. He runs to her and says, what happened? What happened? She says, he hurt my feelings. He says, who hurt your feelings? She says, Shimon on the block. He says, give me his address. I'm going to go down there. A father loves his 6-year-old daughter because he invests in her. What about his 25-year-old daughter? What about his daughter who just turned 40? If a man would invest in his wife in the same way he invests in his daughter, there wouldn't be anything he wouldn't do for her. A father wants one thing from his daughter, and that's that she should remain healthy. She should be happy. That's the attitude that you have to have towards your wife. A father's not looking for what he could receive from his daughter because all he yearns for is her healthy status. If he does that, he has that attitude with his wife, he'll be able to cling to his wife. When he detaches his needs and desires from that relationship. So we see that ultimately, you know what love is? Love is giving. So let's go back to that couple that was standing under the chuppah. We said about them that they're two self-absorbed people who want to get married. But once we get married, there has to be a significant switch in the attitude. When we were single, we were selfish and we looked out for our own best interest. We were more interested in what we received than what we gave. But once we step foot under the chuppah, the attitude is that we are no longer remaining single. We are now shedding the single life and all its attitudes, and we're becoming married people. Whereas before, we were more concerned about taking, we're now going to enter into a world of being givers. In other words, we don't get married in order to receive. We get married in order to learn what it is to give. Whoever can make that mental switch in his brain and concentrate on being a giver rather than a taker will see and experience the ultimate happiness in his relationship. And again, I say this in a normal situation where, as a result of the giving, inevitably the other side responds in the same way. But Rav Dessler used to tell couples under the chuppah the following words. He used to tell them, my dear couple, I'm going to give you now the key to a happy marriage. As long as you use this key, you'll experience joy and bliss. The key is that as long as you want to give to one another and make each other happy, you'll have a successful marriage. But the moment you're going to look for ways in which the other person can satisfy your needs and wishes, the moment you turn into selfish beings who only look out for your own self-interest and you begin to demand things from each other, that's the day your happiness will vanish. A young husband who I taught his wife when she was a single girl called me and he said, Rabanit, you said in your lecture that when you demand from your spouse, the joy vanishes. Can you give me an example of a demand that will cause the love to vanish? So I said, well, a demand would sound something like this. Make me a cup of coffee. Men tend to do this, by the way. So he said, so if she won't make a cup of coffee, who will? I said, you make it yourself. He said, but I come home from work exhausted. And I said, and she's wiped out from taking care of the house and the kids the entire day. So he says to me, but it's so hard for me. So I said, the nisayon begins when things become tough, not when it's easy. The less you're going to expect, the happier you're going to be. The greatest pleasure a person could experience is that of being a giver, not a taker. A person who takes the time to give of himself will eventually have a lot that he'll receive. If a couple will invest in making each other happy and give to one another, they'll experience the ultimate state of joy. 10 minutes before a man comes home from work, he should be thinking the following: what can I do for my wife when I come that would make her happy? He shouldn't be thinking, I wonder what she's going to prepare for me now, or what she'll do to make me happy because I really had a bad day. I really had a challenging day. Same is true for a woman. Before your husband comes home, you should be thinking of ways to make him happy. And the point is that when two people are occupied in how they can give each other rather than what they can take from one another, they're going to become a very, very happy couple. We're going to end here. And again, I wish you a lot of bracha and atzlacha bechol maaseh yadechem. May the lessons of Shalom Bayit, first of all, bring joy and happiness to all those singles out there that need a shidduch, to all those couples who are suffering from Shalom Bayit. May enhance your Shalom Bayit, and Bezrat Hashem we should see Yeshuot v'nechamot bekarov mamash.